to speak? If not, I'll recognize the Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to conclude the debate on the government's policy statement, throne speech, and indeed the budget. I wish to thank all members of this Honorable House who have made the time and energy to contribute to the debate, and to particularly thank at this stage the Minister of Finance for winding up the debate on the appropriation bill. Madam Speaker, in a true democracy such as we have, all sides of the House should be given ample opportunity to voice approval or disapproval of the government's policies. And while I don't always agree with everything that is said in the debate by those sitting opposite, I am pleased that we serve in a democracy where all sides are able to express their views. But at times, Madam Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition does his best, in my view, to strain that privilege. And so I feel it is my duty to point out the erroneous statements made in his contribution, and to remind this Honorable House and the good people of these islands of a few truths. I find it troubling that his recollection of the events that transpired from 2009 to 2013 under the UDP administration is so off track. Does he not realize, or can he not admit, that the UDP lost the 2013 elections because the voters of this country lost confidence and perhaps felt betrayed by his leadership as Premier and Minister of almost everything? I believe, Madam Speaker, that he is only misleading himself. I have to admit, Madam Speaker, that I found his contribution to the debate quite extraordinary. It was my understanding that the House was debating the vital question of this government's budget and our plans for the future of these islands. However, it appears that the Leader of the Opposition was of the understanding that we were debating the record of the 2009-2013 administration, and therefore the debate offered him an opportunity to rewrite history and attempt to justify the failings of his administration. His reasoning for doing so, he said, was because of the personal attacks I made against him during my policy statement, which he claimed formed, quote, such a large percentage, unquote, of my speech. Madam Speaker, because I wanted to be fair to the Leader of the Opposition, I went back to my policy statement and did some checking. I found 6 references to the UDP government in my comments, but I could find only 1 reference to the Leader of the Opposition. Just 1. At most, I talked about him for a total of 85 words. 85 words, Madam Speaker, in a speech that ran to more than 8,800 words. I make that to be less than 2% of my speech. But maybe anything said about him is too great a percentage for him to bear. Madam Speaker, I'm happy to remind this House exactly what I said in those 85 words, and I quote from the policy statement. Some politicians opposite, particularly the Leader of the Opposition, appear more comfortable being stuck in and living in the past, fighting the same wearisome old battles of yesterday. That attitude and approach achieves absolutely nothing for the people of this country. It does the opposite and ruins the prospects for the people and the country. But the country can rest assured that neither I as Premier nor the government as a whole will be distracted from our duty and mission by political stunts and sideshows by those whose future is now well and truly past, unquote. Madam Speaker, in reviewing a copy of, or I should say the transcript, the Hansard transcript of his speech, that is the Leader of the Opposition speech, I dare say that an extremely large percentage of his debate was taken up talking about the 2005-2009 or 2009-2013 administrations. With his own mouth, he has proven that my criticisms in those 85 words were well-founded. Madam Speaker, I also said in the policy statement that we cannot go back to the personality politics and a government focused on self-aggrandizement and political survival. Does the leader of the opposition even know how many times in his debate that he talked about himself or referred to the last administration as his own government? To save him and everyone else having to read it all again to count, I will give just one example of the problem he has. Near the very beginning of his speech, he actually said, referring to himself, Madam Speaker, when I was the government, I will say that again, Madam Speaker, when I was the government. I will leave others to decide whether that is personality politics and self-aggrandizement. The leader of the opposition, Madam Speaker, was indeed the minister of everything. When he did finally have something to say about this government, Madam Speaker, he seemed to be saying that everything we have worked so hard for and so proudly achieved was somehow to his credit. He's wrong, Madam Speaker. As you know, we are at the midterm of this administration, and while the past 2 years have passed swiftly, indeed, Madam Speaker, sometimes it seems in a blur. During that time, we have done many things to right the wrongs made under the leadership of the now leader of the opposition. Madam Speaker, this progressives-led administration has made excellent progress over the past 2 years in moving forward with our plans for this term. And if one is to line up this midterm report with the manifesto of the progressives, one will quickly see, Madam Speaker, that we are delivering on the priorities, on the promises we made. That is progress, Madam Speaker. Progress that includes and indeed is built on turning around an economy that was at a standstill under the UDP administration into an economy that is stronger, more sustainable, and growing, with GDP up a respectable 2.1% this year, and with all indicators pointing to a further increase next year and beyond. The US, by comparison, which has one of the largest and most diversified economies in the world, recorded a 2.2% growth at the end of last year. So all told, given our size, comparably, we are doing very well, and we are set to do better as the economy continues to pick up. Along with an improving economy, we also have a private sector that once again believes that it can trust government to keep its word and to negotiate in good faith and stand by its commitments. This renewed confidence, Madam Speaker, coupled with our good stewardship of government finances and an overall feeling of stability, has helped create an atmosphere that fosters business confidence and that attracts private sector investment. This confidence and stability was severely eroded under the UDP administration when it was led by the now leader of the opposition. But this confidence, Madam Speaker, has returned, and so we now see several major private sector initiatives comfortably moving forward or coming to the fore and creating jobs and further building confidence. Each and every one of these projects has benefited from this government's support and encouragement. We've also worked hard to enable growth in the financial services, industry, and tourism, as well as encouraged and assisted small businesses to help them grow as well. All of this is helping bring back jobs lost during the recession, and employment will continue to improve once the new business projects come online, and as the small business sector again begins to grow, along with the pillar industries of financial services and tourism. And of course, Madam Speaker, there are various efforts to encourage new market segments, such as the new maritime park that will be set up in partnership with CEC, and others such as Tech City, which will look to serve as a healthcare and technology incubator, and so help attract new businesses to Cayman. All of these will not only create hundreds of job opportunities for Caymanians, but will also bring more revenue to government, enabling further reductions in tax on business and individuals, or an increase in needed benefits for our people. This progress, Madam Speaker, has not happened by chance or luck. It is the direct result of this administration's sound and sensible planning and our disciplined implementation of those plans. Madam Speaker, let me outline the basis of those plans again to assist the Leader of the Opposition. As I mentioned, our main goal and focus was to turn around the economy and to promote strong, sustainable economic growth for the benefit of all Caymanians. These strategies, Madam Speaker, were: 1, establishing and maintaining effective frameworks of governance and financial stability for government, which have the effect of improving openness and transparency, increasing public confidence in government, maintaining fiscal responsibility, improving efficiency and effectiveness of government operations, reducing the overall size of government, and increasing customer satisfaction with public services. 2, Madam Speaker, supporting the growth of financial services and tourism, achieving positive growth in both key sectors, delivering key improvements that support growth, ensuring effectiveness of legal and regulatory frameworks, and improving Caymanian representation at all levels in the workforce. 3, Madam Speaker, developing the required infrastructure through direct investment and by supporting the private sector. A, by investing directly to achieve defined benefits, supporting appropriate private sector investment, and producing a strategic plan for the islands to guide all future development. 4, Madam Speaker, fostering positive business environment that incentivizes entrepreneurs and minimizes the cost of doing business. 5, Madam Speaker, ensuring that the benefits of growth are felt by all parts of society, by improving education skills, ensuring welfare programs are effective, reducing unemployment, improving living standards, reducing the burden of duties on households, improving health and well-being, improving social cohesion, and improving community safety. And 6, Madam Speaker, and the final strategy, balancing economic growth with the necessary protection of the environment. Madam Speaker, compare where we are today to the chaos that reigned when the now Leader of the Opposition was Premier. Madam Speaker, I mentioned at a recent gathering that I would be a very rich man if I had $1 for every time in the recent past that someone has stopped me and said, "Al, things are not perfect, but they sure have gotten better. And the stability is good too. I no longer wake up every morning wondering what the latest scandal or outrageous announcement is going to be." Unquote. Madam Speaker, when things are stable, stability might seem like a small thing. But really, it is not small at all. Madam Speaker, let us reflect for a minute. The now Leader of the Opposition has served in at least 4 administrations as a minister and had responsibility for a portfolio of a long list of subjects. By my count, Madam Speaker, 3 of the administrations in which he served did not survive the term with the administration intact. There was the administration of 1996 to 2000 when the Leader of the Opposition served, I believe, as what was then called the member with responsibility for community development, sports, women's and youth affairs, and culture. Members of this Honorable House, Madam Speaker, will recall that in the wake of the first Cayman Bank failure, the Leader of the Opposition, then a member of Executive Council, resigned. Then, Madam Speaker, there was the administration of 2000 to 2005, with time added on due to Hurricane Ivan. when he served as member with responsibility for tourism, environment, and transport. Madam Speaker, the now Minister of Planning, Lands, Agriculture and Housing and Infrastructure was then the leader of government business from November 2000 to November 2001. It only took a year, Madam Speaker, for the now leader of the opposition to cause to be brought to this Honorable House a motion to revoke the appointment, the election of the now Minister of Planning to the Executive Council and to cause things to be changed so that he became leader of government business and led that administration, or the revised administration, from 2001 to 2005. Madam Speaker, I was a newcomer to this House at the time, and that has been one of the most valuable lessons that I have ever learned in my life in politics. And Madam Speaker, of course, there was more recently the administration in which the now leader of the opposition served as premier from 2009 to 2012. Madam Speaker, all will remember that on a vote of no confidence by this Honorable House, the now leader of the opposition was removed as premier on the 18th of December 2012. And so, Madam Speaker, 3 of the 4 cabinets or executive councils in which he served never survived the full term intact. That, Madam Speaker, speaks volumes about the instability that ensues when the now leader of the opposition is anywhere near the leadership of the affairs of this country. Madam Speaker, the lesson that I have learned, and I hope, Madam Speaker, that this country has learned, is just what a destabilizing effect the now leader of the opposition has on any government. His disregard for following proper procurement process, his political interference, his mismanagement of the country's affairs and finances, and his magnetic capacity to attract scandals caused the country endless concern and grief. Madam Speaker, in case anyone thinks that I'm manufacturing this, one need only think about the $4 million plus cost overruns from the Royal Watler Cruise project, the $1.65 million that the Auditor General noted was wasted during the construction of the Bosun Bay project, the mess caused in the aftermath of Hurricane Ivan, including what the Auditor General noted was a loss of some $20 million to $58 million given up in the insurance claims by government from the hurricane, the $450,000 wasted in the Cohen and Associates loan refinancing deal, and there is the $2.5 million paid to GLF for breach of contract over the building or over the contract to build the cruise berthing mega pier that the administration, the UDP administration, was proposing. But Madam Speaker, the leader of the opposition believes that the country has forgotten what a disaster he was when he served as premier. Indeed, Madam Speaker, he seems to be of the view that his time as premier was one filled with many successes. Take the DART agreement as just one offering. He used their agreement with DART as an example of the steps the 2009 to 13 UDP administration were forced to take because of the financial crisis they inherited. Madam Speaker, this government and I personally have spent many hours in discussions with DART to improve the agreement and to get a better one for the country that did not include DART retaining 50% of the hotel room tax. I don't blame DART for seeking to get the best deal they could, but I do hold the now leader of the opposition and his administration responsible for not doing the same for this country. I am grateful that the management of DART realized that this administration, while serious about the need to improve the agreement, also realized that we are a government that they also realize that we are a government that can be trusted to negotiate in good faith. It is, Madam Speaker, the Progressives-led administration that has renegotiated and finalized the Third Amendment to the controversial National Roads Authority Agreement, which the previous administration made with DART. Madam Speaker, another example of where this government has had to renegotiate because of an initial bad deal dealt to our own people is that of the agreement with Cayman Enterprise City, which was agreed by the UDP administration when CEC was owned and operated by the initial investors, including one Jason Blake. Madam Speaker, CEC in recent years is under new ownership and management, and the performance of the zone has improved greatly. But the fact is that until recently, the original agreement remaining in place was preventing Caymanian businesses from entering any market segments that were included in the original CEC, that is Cayman Enterprise City, as exclusive to the zone. Madam Speaker, as has been previously reported, CEC has renegotiated its legal agreement with government to now allow government the ability for reasonable flexibility in allowing other businesses, especially Caymanian businesses, to have access to the market segments that were locked down by the original agreement. In return, CEC was provided the ability to cater to other types of businesses, and government has partnered with them to introduce a new feature, a maritime services park. Madam Speaker, this government has indeed carried on some of the things begun in government under the UDP. We have only done so when they have been right for the country. Support for Health City is a good example. But Madam Speaker, the leader of the opposition should not be surprised that we carried this forward, as the Progressives supported it from the outset. There are other things that we have kept going, but in name only, just so we could snatch them from the jaws of failure. Yes, Madam Speaker, the UDP administration may have implemented them, but they did so very badly. Madam Speaker, since his own speech opened up the topic, I will just contrast this government's willingness to maintain or adapt programs that are right for Cayman, whoever thought of them, with the approach taken by the incoming UDP government in 2009. Then the UDP just threw out everything the previous administration had introduced. I'll give one very strong example. Our administration had set up good, solid education reform, including, Madam Speaker, having passed the Education Modernization Law in March of 2009. The UDP's Madam Speaker, UDP's failure to follow through with what we had begun has set the country back years and damaged the chances of hundreds of children. Madam Speaker, shortly, the Minister of Education will be bringing a revised form of the Education Modernization Law back to this House for passage of a new bill, but a bill, Madam Speaker, which retains the structure and most of the provisions of the law that was passed in March of 2009. But, Madam Speaker, we will have lost more than 7 years. That is just one prime example and reason why this country cannot risk the UDP or the CDP or whatever they'll be calling themselves in the next election, ever being in government again. Madam Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition in his debate chastised this government for not reducing the fees and duties that were raised by his administration, with the exception of the fuel duty surcharge. But we have managed, Madam Speaker, to reduce the fuel duty surcharge, not just by the 25 cents per gallon cut we were able to give the country in January, but a further 25 cents in January coming. Next year, customers of CUC will have seen their power bills reduced because of this government's efforts to right the unfair tax imposed on all of us by the UDP, who added more than $100 million to the tax burden of this country in a 3.5-year span. Madam Speaker, this government has also eased some of the financial burden the UDP imposed on businesses, especially small businesses, meaning they aren't having to close their doors, that they are now able to turn a profit, that they are now able to hire willing and able Caymanians to work. Madam Speaker, this assistance included reduced trade and business license fees as an incentive to support the creation and development of new businesses by offering discounts to small businesses based on their location. Georgetown and West Bay got a 25% discount. Bordentown, Northside, East End, Little Cayman a 50% discount, and Cayman Brac a 75% discount. Madam Speaker, small businesses, that is those with 10 or fewer employees, were also permitted to pay their annual license fees in quarterly installments instead of the typical one-time full payment. We did this, Madam Speaker, because we recognize that in the current economic climate, the requirement of a one-time full payment is onerous, since the annual payment is required during the period when cash flows are at their lowest. Madam Speaker, we also reduced import duty on a vast array of goods from 22% to 20% for licensed traders. This additional 2%, Madam Speaker, had been added by the now leader of the opposition and his government during their term. And so, Madam Speaker, in stark contrast, and despite the financial chaos we inherited, this government has not raised any taxes and has no plans to do so now or in the future. Instead, we have shown that we are willing to cut taxes when it is affordable to do so, and will continue to look for opportunities to further reduce the cost of living as our financial strategy continues to be successful. In another area, Madam Speaker, where this government has had to pick up and mend fences, I will turn back the pages of history to the second sitting of the second meeting of the 2012-13 session of the Legislative Assembly, held on 7th of November 2012, when we specifically discussed the public management and finance law and the framework for fiscal responsibility. Madam Speaker, as I said then, the then Premier and now Leader of the Opposition signed the framework for fiscal responsibility with the UK government. In particular, Madam Speaker, with the Overseas Territories Minister at the time, Mr. Henry Bellingham, on the 23rd of November, 2011. The agreement says, Madam Speaker, on its first page, that subject to the agreement of this Honourable House, it will be incorporated into a revised public management and finance law to come into effect by 1st July 2012. Madam Speaker, some members of this House will recall that there was no discussion with the then opposition about the terms of this agreement in advance of its signature. None of us knew anything at all about what was transpiring within the inner sanctum of government. Madam Speaker, in his presentation, the now Leader of the Opposition went on at considerable length about how he was forced to sign the FFR because he needed to get through the budget, and that this had been forced upon the government of this country because of the mismanagement of the government finances by our previous PPM administration, that the UK had grave concerns about the budgeting process. They had grave concerns about the borrowing. They had grave concerns about the debt. And if you listen to him back then, Madam Speaker, they didn't have any grave concerns about procurement. But procurement formed part of the agreement nonetheless. Madam Speaker, as events unfolded, it became apparent that the financial conduct of the affairs of the country by the PPM administration from 2005 to 2009 had nothing at all to do with forcing this agreement. If that had been the case, Madam Speaker, why didn't the UK come after the PPM while we were in government? Further, Madam Speaker, why did they wait until November 2011, more than 2 years after the UDP took the helm of government, before they insisted on the agreement being signed? By that point, Madam Speaker, the now leader of the opposition had presented 3 full budgets to this House, and each had been passed. Madam Speaker, many in this House and those listening via radio and television will remember that the now leader of opposition signed the agreement in a big hurry and in great secrecy, and to this day has yet to give the country a proper explanation of why he acted as he did when he executed the agreement. We will recall that the great irony was that having signed the agreement, he then proceeded to steadfastly refuse to comply with its provisions. He had problems presenting to the country a budget that met the approval of the UK government, meaning, in the end, Madam Speaker, that the budget was actually presented to this House a full 3 months late. Once the UK gave its consent to the budget, it put on a condition that the framework for fiscal responsibility had to be incorporated into legislation. The now leader of opposition's response was to take issue with certain provisions in the document and the absence of other provisions in the document, and to say that experts had been telling him that this could have disastrous consequences for Cayman if the FFR was incorporated without amendment as part of local legislation. Madam Speaker, that mulishness on the part of the leader of the opposition led to a letter from the UK Minister of Finance telling the now leader of the opposition that if he did not pass legislation incorporating the FFR without amendment, the UK would have to resort to what they called alternative measures, which we had to interpret as meaning that they would legislate for the Cayman Islands by order in council. Then, Madam Speaker, if you will recall, there was the mysterious letter purportedly signed by the now leader of the opposition and allegedly sent to the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. Strangely enough, neither the governor nor the Foreign and Commonwealth Office could find any trace of having received the letter. Madam Speaker, when he made his presentation in this Honorable House, he was quite belligerent, and he made it plain that Minister Simmons, who was the FCO minister at the time — I said Minister of Finance earlier, Madam Speaker, I meant the Minister with responsibility for the overseas territories — that Minister Simmons clearly didn't have all the facts, clearly didn't understand that he, the Premier at the time, was not going to be intimidated by the FCO. But Madam Speaker, following that bravado, in a few days, he did deliver a statement to the country in which he said that the big bad United Kingdom government and the evil leader of the opposition, being me at the time, had forced him to capitulate and to agree to legislate the FFR in its original terms, and indeed to back down on his determination to sign a contract with China Harbor for the construction of berthing facilities in Georgetown Harbor. Madam Speaker, even when we received the bill in the House, it still did not address the major issues that concerned the United Kingdom government. The whole issue of procurement practices within the Cayman Islands government, which the UK was extremely concerned about. under the UDP administration. Madam Speaker, it was clear then, as it is today, that the UDP administration, especially the now leader of the opposition, who was then also Minister of Finance, had blatant disregard for the provisions of the Public Management and Finance Law as it related to procurement. There was the situation with the Cohen financing, which had not been properly processed through Central Tenders Committee. The result was that a company that had been cherry-picked by the now leader of the opposition wound up getting the contract supposedly for the financing. In the end, it had to be terminated and wound up costing government some $450,000, according to the Auditor General. Then we had the situation with GLF, which was to be the contractor for the ill-fated cruise berthing facilities, and which had its contract terminated by the then Premier, now leader of opposition. That contract was wrongfully terminated because the country wound up paying some US $3 million as compensation to GLF. And then we had China Harbor, again being cherry-picked by the now leader of the opposition, and a contract over the course of 18 months, which I said earlier, was found by the United Kingdom to be fraught with issues. Madam Speaker, the harsh reality is that the former Premier and his administration brought us to the brink of possible intervention by the United Kingdom government. Madam Speaker, maybe it was because of his inattention, maybe it was because of his habit of spending so much time off the island that he could not properly apply himself to the affairs of the country. Whatever it was, Madam Speaker, it brought us to the brink of a possible suspension of our Constitution in the way that occurred in the Turks and Caicos Islands. Madam Speaker, I have reached back into the annals of time and spent some time here refreshing the memories of members of this House and our listening and viewing audiences of the problems that plagued the UDP administration, problems of their own making, especially by the now leader of the opposition. The budgets they produced under him as Minister of Finance were bad for the country and led, as I have just iterated, to intervention from the UK, forcing the UDP and its leader and Minister of Finance to sign up to the FFR requirements. The UK was at the time ensuring that the now leader of the opposition was going to keep his otherwise empty promises, live up to his obligations, and to indeed stop frittering away valuable opportunities and wasting millions of dollars of the Cayman Islands government. Madam Speaker, this administration, which I have the honor and privilege to lead, has proven without a shadow of a doubt that we support the framework for fiscal responsibility and need no such outside influences or threats. We demonstrated it when we first took office, when we presented a credible 3-year financial plan to the country and to the UK to put government finances on solid ground. The outcome has been budgets that produce strong revenue growth with controlled expenditure through disciplined financial planning that have led to good surpluses. The outcome has also been budgets that have consistently met the required legislative, appraisal, and value for money tenets that looked at reducing debt and were presented to the UK on time and were approved by them without issue on each occasion. Madam Speaker, we continually produce budgets for economic growth, for jobs and prosperity. Our budgets cut the burden of taxes to the benefit of families and businesses. They also secure sound government finances and reduce debt. Each and every budget the Progressives-led government has presented takes us toward a better tomorrow. Madam Speaker, I will remind this House that our economy is now stronger and more sustainable, with growth up to 2.1% for this current fiscal year. That growth is predicted to steadily increase, barring any unforeseen disasters or emergencies, such as major hurricanes. A strengthened economy has helped create hundreds of private sector jobs, and overall employment has fallen from 6.3% under the leadership of the now leader of the opposition in 2013 to 4.7% as of December 2014 under the Progressives-led government. A strengthened economy has put us in the enviable spot of seeing our tourism numbers grow at record levels. I know the leader of the opposition sought to take credit for the growth in those numbers, just as he continues to take credit for the hard work being done by this administration. But numbers don't lie, Madam Speaker. Stay-over tourism was up 10.84% in 2014 over the previous year, and under this administration, cruise tourism is up 16.98% in 2014 over 2013. The budget we presented to the House 2 weeks ago shows revenues that have been projected, and we will proceed with caution to ensure those projections come to fruition. We are already thinking of how to decrease the tax burden even further in the 2016-17 budget, and realize it is a fine balancing act, reducing the burden on our people and businesses while ensuring government operates smoothly and properly. Madam Speaker, the leader of the opposition ended his debate inviting all members to a meeting opposing one person, one vote. Madam Speaker, all I wish to say about this at that time is he can stand against it all he wants. As I said 2 weeks ago, we have delivered on the commitment to move forward with electoral reform, looking to introduce one person, one vote and single-member voting districts, key principles in accountable democratic government. The Boundary Commission is now in place and at work, and we await their report. I can understand the reluctance of the leader of the opposition to try to turn people away from these democratic concepts, given his electoral success over many years under the current system. But as I said, Madam Speaker, before, I feel sorry for him, but I won't cry. I could go on and on, Madam Speaker, but I grow weary of attempting to right all of the misrepresentations made by the leader of the opposition in his so-called debate. But, Madam Speaker, let me conclude by again highlighting some of the things that the Progressives-led administration has accomplished on issues that the previous administration discussed, but did little more. Madam Speaker, we have agreed to implement a national minimum wage to go in force on the 1st of March next year. We have reduced duties on some imported goods, including diesel used by CUC. The civil service is getting a much needed and deserved cost of living increase starting in July. We have enacted the National Conservation Law. We delivered on our promise to consult on Sunday trading and to make the adjustments and amendments that were suggested. We are delivering key infrastructure improvements with airport redevelopment and a new cruise berthing facility. We are strengthening the economy through public and private partnership projects. We are creating a new maritime park. We support continued development of Health City. We are modernizing our legal framework in the area of intellectual property. We are supporting the employment of more Caymanians by strengthening the National Workforce Development Agency. We are acting swiftly on a long-term solution to the country's waste problem. We have drafted a disabilities bill. We will pass the long-awaited Builders Bill, and we have established a central procurement office. Madam Speaker, those are just a few highlights. Because of extraordinary teamwork, the Progressives-led government has been successful in righting the good ship Cayman that the UDP administration left listing and fast taking on water. Madam Speaker, the leader of the opposition is fond of saying that I had to put 4 people on the Progressives-led team to do the job that he did. But we all know the job that he did. Madam Speaker, I am not as able as the leader of the opposition. My shoulders are not as broad. My intellect is not as strong. to be able to assume responsibility as Minister of Finance, Minister of Financial Services, Minister of Development, Minister of Tourism, Minister of Commerce, and be Premier as well. And Madam Speaker, if anyone wonders why the leader of, among other things, the leader of the opposition, the now leader of the opposition, struggled to carry out his duties, just examine the list of responsibilities and portfolios which he assumed. Madam Speaker, what I have sought to do as Premier is to put key people who have the ability, training, experience, and acumen to do the jobs they hold in this progressive-led administration. I do not attempt to be minister of everything. Madam Speaker, today our country is benefiting from the combined experience and wisdom of our team. Teamwork is something this country has not had for many years, especially under the leadership of the now leader of the opposition. Madam Speaker, this government is not looking at our service to this country as just a 4-year term at which we are at the midpoint. We thoroughly hope and expect to be in office for much longer, to see that the projects we have shepherded for the benefit of our people and country are carried through, and that the sound financial base that we are building and the good governance structures that we are putting in place are carried through and ultimately endure for the benefit of the people of this beloved country. Madam Speaker, even a recent Cayman Compass poll gives this government a 72% approval rating at midterm. Madam Speaker, we hope to carry on as we have started. I believe our people will judge the performance of this government in due course and realize that we have delivered on our promises, unlike those uttered when the now leader of the opposition was Premier. Madam Speaker, I leave this honorable House and all within the sound of my voice with this. This administration has turned the economy of the Cayman Islands around. We said we would get there, and now we have. We have proven, Madam Speaker, that we can deliver on our promise of stability and prosperity because we did what we said we were going to do. We have a plan, and we are sticking to it. Ours is but to fight the good fight. It is what we will continue to do for the betterment of our people now and into the future. We will go forward and continue to increase the prosperity of our country and our people. Madam Speaker, we are on a good path. Cayman is on a good track. And Madam Speaker, we shall continue with God's help and guidance to lead this country toward a better tomorrow. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question is that a bill shortly entitled the Appropriation July 2015 to June 2016 Bill 2015 be given a second reading. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. Accordingly, the Appropriation July 2015 to June 2016 Bill 2015 has been given a second reading. I recognize Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we are right on schedule. It is, I believe, about 6 o'clock. And again, I wish to thank all members of this Honourable House for working late every evening so that we could complete the debate on the budget, throne speech, and policy statement in good time. And Madam Speaker, as indicated by the Minister of Finance, we intend to start proceedings in Finance Committee at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. With that, Madam Speaker, I move the adjournment of this Honourable House until the conclusion of Finance Committee.
The question is that this Honorable House be adjourned until the conclusion of Finance Committee. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. Accordingly, the House now stands adjourned until the conclusion of our Finance Committee, which I understand will commence at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.